What's going on, team? Proof here, and today coming at you with another Duel Masters Plays video, and this time it's going to be featuring Mono Water Liquid People, featuring Java Jack here. And this is a deck that I've enjoyed, like, thematically. It's a beat style deck, which, as you know, that I enjoy those, but for whatever reason it has not vibed with me ever since it came out last set. So with the new ladder reset that took place yesterday, I believe, I decided to give another crack at it after trying some other decks and not having some success. So I chose this one because it's fast, it can be powerful, and so games go by quicker, which makes it better for climbing, especially once you get onto a win streak. And when you're trying to climb up, if you hit a 3-win streak, you start getting double stars as you go up, especially in platinum, which is where I normally start off at. So we're gonna go through the deck. I'm gonna show off some replays and then also have some stats at the end of this, because I kind of took track of like my wins and losses and stuff like that, and kind of will talk about them for a little bit and kind of see how things panned out during my usage of the deck. So as you can see, the key card of this deck is Java Jack Ultra Flash. He's an evolution creature, and the Liquid People deck here definitely centers around trying to utilize your Liquid People evolutions as efficiently as possible, which is, you'll see as we go through it. So Java Jack says when he enters the battle zone, draw 4 cards and then put 2 cards from your hand to the bottom of the deck. And in addition to that, he says if you have 2 or more other Liquid People, your opponent cannot choose this creature. So it gives you card draw and hand sifting to be able to keep the good cards that you want to keep in hand, and allows you to chain your evolutions turn over turn. And in addition to that, you can actually give it the ability not to be chosen, which is great for opposing shield triggers, because a lot of the common shield triggers in the game right now are targeted. So Java Jack gets around that if you have the board to do so. It can be tricky sometimes because you also try to be aggressive early on, so sometimes you might be playing a more aggressive game where you can't actually get him to his threshold to be able to not be targeted. But it also can come into play as the game goes on and like you're trying to get over the hump a little bit, so you go for a wider board setup to make it safe for Java Jack to actually finish the game off for you. And trying to find that line is very key to using a deck like this. For the other evolutions, we have Visvid Ultra Flash, Liquid People of course, and he says when he enters the battle zone, you may return one of your opponent's creatures to their hand. So really good for tempo, as we talked about in the previous video. I really like decks that can tempo out, and this card does that while also being a big double breaker that your opponent has to worry about and deal with. And then the last evolution I have is just a little one of Crystal Super Paladin. He says when it enters the battle zone, return one of your opponent's psychic creatures to their hyperspatial zone. So really good for like maybe getting some troublesome cards out of the way. And then he also says when this attacks, return all creatures that have blocker to their owner's hand. So it allows you just to wipe the board and of blockers to give you free attacks on the shields. Now this has gone down since last meta because there's been some cards that have come out since that made big blocker decks kind of go down in popularity. You do still see them enough, so that's why having a little tech one of in here does good work. There's potential there to put in 2 if you feel you need to have that second one though. And then for some of the other Liquid People, we have Aqua Guard, little 1-mana blocker, really good for getting yourself on the ground early. Also really good for stopping May, which is the demon as I like to call it, because May needs to be unblocked to be able to flip over. And so if you have an Aqua Guard on 1, it stops that whole early game for those big ramp decks. Then we have Aqua Evolter. Your water evolution creatures cost 1 less to summon. The other rest of that doesn't really matter, but it means that you can go turn 2 Evolter, turn 3 Java Jack, which is one of the big early game plays you can make with this deck. And then we have Java Kid. He says when this enters the battle zone, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a Liquid People, add it to your hand, otherwise put it to the graveyard. So you ideally you want to hit it, but then if you do flip off top and it's not a Liquid People, that might be a card you didn't want to see anyway. So it makes your next draw a little bit better regardless of the outcome. For the last Liquid People, we have Aqua Surfer, which is a popular shield trigger in this deck. You might recognize this card if you're watching this video, you haven't played Duel Masters in a long time. This card might seem familiar to you. And Shield Trigger, when it comes into the battle zone, return one of your opponent's creatures to their hand. Good for tempo, good for getting troublesome attackers out of the way, putting a body on the board for you to be able to attack with it as well. And then as for the other cards in the deck, we have My Pad Start Dash. So Start Dashes was a series of cards that came out this set, and each one of the colors, they reduce the first card or the first creature on your turn that you summon by 1. So this means that you can go turn 1 Aqua Guard, turn 2 My Pad, and then you can go turn 3 Java Jack once again, like you can with Evolter. It has some other applications as well, as you'll see in a little bit. Oh, my bad, I forgot one Liquid People. Aqua Elite, which is arguably the most important in the deck, especially when it comes to getting yourself on the ground and running. He says when he enters the battle zone, draw a card and then put an evolution Liquid People that costs 5 or less from your hand on top of this creature. So Java Jack, Vilvid, and Crystal Paladin, or Crystal Super Paladin in the case of New Division, they all fit that criteria, and you get that extra dig for it, which means in a pinch you can just play it without having another evolution creature in your hand, and you can maybe top deck it and then play it on top of the Aqua Elite here. So this has a nice 1-2 punch with My Pad as well, because you can go turn 2 My Pad, turn 3 Aqua Elite into Java Jack as well. And that's what makes this deck so powerful. There's those interactions like that can really put a lot of pressure on your opponent early to get your evolution creatures rolling. Fuma Gorgon Shock makes all spells cost 2 more. So in a deck like this that has no spells, it's fine. But there's a lot of decks out there that do utilize cheaper spells or spells in general, and this can slow it down by 2 turns, which gives you that ability just to get under it and be able to beat your opponent down. And then the last card we have is Ragnarok the Clock. Card we saw in the last video, arguably the strongest shield trigger in the game right now because it just ends the whole turn. So a lot of decks are utilizing that to be able to shut down aggressive decks, to be able to shut down OTK or one-shot decks as they call it in the community here. And we use it here for the exact same reason, and it also means that just another creature that we can put on the board as well. So we have 8 ways of slowing down the opponent if they want to be aggressive. And before we get into the replays, I want to highlight this card here, Robo Filler Concurian. It's a card that I put into my deck to as time went on. So the deck I showcased right here is like the base version that you can utilize. And this card here is a good for having a counter tech option against the popular decks that like to put a lot of cards into their graveyard right now. And I use 2 of these, as you're going to see, and I think at least one of the replays I'm going to showcase. But it being like a little 2 cost here, very easy to slot in. But it's also an additional non-liquid people in the deck, which makes Java Kid a little bit worse because it gives you another target that you might be able to whiff on. So something to keep in mind if you're trying to utilize this card is try to figure out how to balance the rest of the deck to have enough liquid people for Java Kid to hit versus having tech cards that are not liquid people. So yeah, I just want to highlight this real quick before the replay. So let's go ahead and get into those. All right, so for this first replay, as you can see here, my hand is looking kind of mediocre. I have not a great turn 2 play because Concurian is better later on in the game if you're playing against those heavy graveyard filling decks. And Gorgon Shock here is decent, but we don't have turn 2 My Pad and the turn 3 Aqua Elite and the Java Jack, those type of powerful plays. So we kind of just have to make do with what we got. So, and we're going second here. And my opponent played Miss May, which is the demon I was talking about. So just kind of highlight it fully. It says, whenever this creature attacks and your opponent, or whenever this creature attacks your opponent, is it blocked? If you have 7 or more Dream Mates, you win the game. Otherwise, stop the attack and flip it into its bigger side. And then the bigger side says enters the battle zone tapped. So if you hard cast it, it comes in tapped because it comes in on as you can have it coming as the 4 side. And then it says, when this creature untaps, if you have 7 Dream Mates, flip it back over to the 1 cost side. If not, reveal the top card of your deck. And if it's a non-evolution Dream Mate, put it into the battle zone so you can put more Miss Mays into the battle zone this way. Otherwise, put it into your mana zone. So play it turn 1, you attack on turn 2. If it's unblocked, flip it. And then on turn 3, you can just start ramping as long as it exists on the board. And so this is the cornerstone of a lot of the big mana decks, and it's also, in my opinion, the most centralizing card of the meta right now. Like, even though I thought the current set would kind of curb it a little bit, it really wasn't that, but I digress. So my opponent plays it, and I really don't have a follow-up option. I didn't draw into Aqua Guard here, so I have no ability to stop it. And my opponent also has additional ramp on top of that. Then they can attack. So going into their turn 3, they'll be able to play a 5 mana card potentially. So thankfully they hit a multicolor card, so that means they can't play a 5 mana card. So they kind of have to skip a turn here, but that also means I don't have a strong follow-up play to go along with that. So I just play Fuma and hope for the best, while my opponent is able to potentially go to 7 mana. So they could play Ryusei Hole through the Gorgon Shock, even though it makes it cost 2 more because they had 7 mana now thanks to the ramp from May. And yeah, so I go to 4. Ryusei Kaiser the Victorious means that I can't increase mana as I play it. So I'm still effectively on 3 mana here, so I can't even play the Aqua Elite and hope to draw into something this turn. So I just play the Ragnarok and just ends the turn there, so I can't attack him if I wanted to. So now my opponent is at 8 mana to my effective 3, going to another Ryusei Hole, the strongest spell in the game arguably, and they just nuke off my Concurion. I do get Java Jack here, so maybe I could try to turn it into something. Play the Elite, play the Java Jack. Sift the cards. I have ability to do something next turn with a follow-up Java Jack, but in the case of me running into a shield trigger, it's probably not going to be effective that way. So they return the Ragnarok so that way I can't break another shield, just to try to work my way through the rest of their shields next turn. And they're able to draw additional cards thanks to this card here. So they soul swap May into Ryusei the Floodgate, Ryusei Kaiser the Eternal, and I just scoop it up. It's hard to keep up with a turn 1 May going second, because they can just get off the ground running if you don't get the Aqua Guard on time. So that's that game. On to the next. So in this game, we're also going second, and I have a little bit of a better hand situation this time around. I can have turn 2 Evolter and the turn 3 Java Jack if I so please, but also means I'm lacking the Surfers, so they're good because it gives you easy access to mana early on because you don't have to really think about choices there, but also it's tougher because you don't have those as shields later if they need to matter. And once again, my opponent has the turn 1 May, but I top decked the Aqua Guard this time, so we are chilling, big chilling. So these decks don't have a way to out the turn 1 Aqua Guard, so they kind of just have to let the May sit there. So that's great for us. So that means we go into set the other Surfer, play Aqua Evolter. My opponent goes Fairy Shower to increase their hand by 1 and increase their mana. So looking at this, they're another big mana deck, but this card here, Secret Zenith Requiem, Secret Zenith, lets me know that they're more of a control style deck with trying to have a big finisher as they grind your resources down. So it means I need to go fast here. Granted, seeing what they were already playing means I need to go fast anyway, but there are some choices to be made later on potentially. So I just set another Aqua Surfer to mana, evolve the Aqua Guard to keep the Evolter around because it can be a potential attacker. I'll draw some cards, sift the unnecessary cards back to the bottom, and then I hit into Super Hell Scraper. So they get rid of my Java Jack, which means my Evolter 6 round for another turn, because they wanted to get rid of it before it gets the protection off. So they play Don Don. Don Don, they look at the top 5. If they add if they add a Fire or Nature card, they can return one of your opponent's creatures back. So they return my Evolter back, and they swing with May. So I play Concurion down as mana, play Aqua Elite, another Java Jack. So you kind of see the train starting to roll now. And I put back the 2 cards I don't need. Now we have a little bit of a decision to make here. So my opponent is at 6 mana, they're getting ready to go into 7 mana. Usually these decks don't have a high impact 7 mana card, at least not commonly played anymore. So I can swing into the May here, and that way my Java Jack will likely stick around on the board. Let's say play another Don Don, for example. Or I can risk breaking the shields here, but on the flip side, if I hit a Fairy Life shield trigger, and if I hit that, they can go up to 8 mana, then they can drop the Ryusei Kaiser Eternal that we saw in the last game, which then means my game is effectively over. So we don't want that to happen, so I opt to swing into the May here. Maybe if it was a different stage of the game, then maybe I'll go for shields, but this time it's safer. So they do have Soul Swap to get rid of this, but they will commit their whole turn to get rid of Java Jack here. However, my only target would be the Concurian, so they probably didn't want to do that. And at the very least, they could play another Ryusei Hole, develop Prin, and then get either the draw or the mana off of it. They opt for the mana, and so they lock down my Java Jack for the turn with the skill of Prin here. So now we come to another decision. So I have the ability to add mana, and then I can do Aqua Elite into Java Jack again, and then I can follow with an Aqua Guard behind it. However, they're at 8 mana now, which means that if they have Ryusei Eternal, it can come down, and then it can attack into one of my tap down Java Jack if I attack with it. And then also, if I swing into shields, they could remove my Aqua Guard. Game over on the spot, especially if that circumstance happened. Conversely, I could add mana, maybe put the Aqua Guard into mana, and then I could play Evolter, My Pad, and an additional Aqua Guard behind it, which means that if a Ryusei Eternal comes down onto the board, then I have lethal presented potentially. So that's a safer option to play. They could go into 9 mana and play something else down, but I think I feel pretty safe here. I haven't seen Darkness mana up to this point, which means Wilhelm isn't on the table currently. So I kind of just played to what the situation presented itself and what I would most likely be afraid of, and that was Ryusei Eternal at the time. So I did play Aqua Guard, I played the My Pad, played the Evolter, play the Aqua Guard down. And I can't attack with my Java Jack anyway, and there's the Eternal. So here, presented with an interesting situation. So we know my opponent plays Soul Swap, and we've seen 2 of them here. This deck tends to play 3 or 4 depending on what they're trying to aim for their top end. Like maybe this Secret Zenith spell here is replacing one of the Soul Swaps, for example. So I have Ragnarok in hand. If I set it to mana and one of the shields is Soul Swap, then they can effectively end my turn there and then maybe restabilize themselves on the board. However, I have a Java Jack here that can have protection and also have Visvid flash as well. And I have the Aqua Elite to help me out because I have the discount from My Pad. So if I play the Aqua Elite down, that uses up the charge for My Pad, which means that my Java Jack then becomes 3 mana. So I need to add mana anyway. However, I need Vil to be able to remove Ryusei to be able to have the Java Jack come in untapped. So that's my dilemma. I can either let the Ryusei sit and I can swing and hope for the best, or I can just play like Aqua Elite into Visvid and remove it and then let these 3 attack and not set this as mana. Or the other play would be to set the Ragnarok as mana, play the Aqua Elite, and play the Java Jack, and then I would have 2 Java Jacks with protection because I would fulfill the Liquid People clause for his protection, which means that I could attack with My Pad or Aqua Evolter to break a shield, and then if it's, say, a Don Don, which I'm always afraid of with these decks, like even if you see 3 of them, this one could always still be that. So I don't know which was the best course of action to take, but we're going to see the route that I did take. So I set the Ragnarok, played the Aqua Elite down. It comes in tapped, as you can see. I played the Vil to get rid of the Ryusei. Now, don't ask me why. don't ask me why I evolved the Vaulter over the Aqua Guard. I don't think it would have mattered really, considering the type of deck that they are. But I did what I did. So I still get the draw and the filter. Now attack with the My Pad here, and then attack with the Java Jack. Who knows what they had? And dub. So if you guys want to comment what you would have done in this situation, feel free. I can see both arguments, or arguments for any course of action really. I just chose, at the moment in time, I thought that was my best play, and try to play around the Don activation. So in this, I'm also once again going second. And if you check my opponent's Hyperspatial Zone, they are appearing to play MRC, aka Mad Rochester, which is a deck that aims to fill up their graveyard incredibly fast, and play Mad Rochester, which allows you to play 3 spells. I think it's Fire and Darkness specifically, but play 3 spells that cost 6 or less, and then they go to the bottom of the deck. So it allows you to play really powerful spells to try to overwhelm your opponent in one fell swoop. So that's what it's presenting as. But sometimes people mask as it, and then they play something that doesn't require Hyperspatial Zone anyway. So I'm going second, which means I'm able to get information before my turn. So that's crucial. And this confirms this confirms that it is MRC actually. So if you want to pause the video and kind of read what it says here, feel free. But this lets me know that they're playing a deck that I need to try to accelerate and get through. But also means they play a lot of shield triggers. So they play like Death Gate, which kind of like Terra Pit for those that are more not as familiar with the current stuff of Duel Masters plays. But they can play that. They can also play Hell Super Scraper, things of that nature. So we got to be on the lookout for that. So I played Vilvid as mana because I want to try and keep this like very premium cards right here. So I played the Evolter down. They played Jenny, try to pop something. They got another Evolter, which means my double jacks are good to go. My pad goes to mana, play Java Jack. And then I get my filter, my sift. By the way, if you guys are listening closely, I'm 95% sure that the voice for Java Jack is the same voice who does Deku or Midoriya from My Hero Academia. Feel free to rewind it back and listen to it again, but I'm pretty certain that's who it is. But I digress. I break 2 shields because only Super Scraper could take it out, because Deathgate requires your target to be untapped. So, and it's also in my best interest to get them down as quickly as possible before they can get the graveyard filled up. I do play Concurion for this deck, but as you can see, it's not showing up. So they play Engage, Enrage Charger, and then they play Schoolman. So Schoolman, when this enters, destroy 2 of your creatures, then your opponent destroys 1 of theirs. If Schoolman's by himself, you can just destroy Schoolman and then still get the ability of the destroy option. So really cheap, like Proclamation of Death for those who might be familiar with that particular card, but really good in this spot, and gives them another shield. But the shield goes away at the end of my turn. So I play Aqua Elite, go into another Java Jack just to keep putting cards into my hand. Then those go to the bottom. There is argument that I wanted to keep the Gorgon, but my opponent's getting ready to go to 6 mana, so I don't think it matters as much at this point. Shield goes away. And then they play Yamino Order to get rid of my Java Jack. So an important thing to note for MRC is that he gets cost reduction for every card in each of our graveyards. So added up, that's why he costs 20, and so he ticks down as the graveyard fills up for both sides. So him playing discard options are very powerful because it counts as 2 discards. So they have 6, I have 6. Right now MRC costs 8. So that's something that I'm always keeping in the back of my mind playing this deck, is when can I reliably see MRC come down. So I'm getting ready to go to 5 mana, and I can also do another Aqua Elite in the Java Jack. But there's also Credence to be able to, I'm going to put this to mana most likely, and then I can potentially play an Aqua Guard if I draw into it. I got the Aqua Guard. I do get the Concurion. Unfortunately, I'm 1 mana short from being able to play it. And my opponent is playing some Spice because they play Bomedius White Flare. It's like it has 2 modes. It can tap down all creatures, or it can choose one of your opponent's creatures and of 6,000 or less and destroy it. So since they destroyed my Aqua Elite, I'm sorry, my Java Jack, I now have 8 cards in the grave, and now they have 7, which means that MRC costs 5 now. So they have the one here. The question is, did they draw into another one? And that's what I'm fearing. But that's also why you play things like Ragnarok, to be able to try to out it. So they kill off this. This lets me know that they can't play MRC this time, because you need to have 2 mana to do it. It does, because it's still a multicolored card. So I have the win locked up here, but I play Concurion just to say that I used it. Just to say that I used it. So BM, yes, it's BM because I had the win in anyway. So I did emotional damage on the way out. I just wanted to use it because I had the win in the bag, and this was my final boss to get me into Masters with this deck. So that's why I wanted to showcase this one, just because I think this is the first time I piloted this deck to Masters, so I was really excited for that. So now we're gonna go into the stats of this real quick. All right, so for the stats that I have with this deck, as you can see, I had 24 like completed games, but I had 4 NAs because I had 4 people forfeit against me. For those that aren't aware, if you are playing against a person who's Duel Masters rank or higher, so like Duel Master or Duel Masters Legend, and you are still in that star rating climb, if they lose against you, they don't lose anything. So mainly the people who play against you, if they're Masters rank, if they're on a winning streak, or they just aren't aware of the fact that if they lose to a person like in Platinum or lower, they don't lose anything. So I had 4 people who were Masters ranked that I ran into that conceded against me just to save time. So I got the win for it, and I got the stars for it, but I'm not counting that into this this ratio. So as you can see, of the games I completed, I had a 67% win percentage, which is honestly, that's ideal for climbing the ladder in a decent clip. So like win 2, lose 1, win 2, lose 1. But in the midst of that, I had an 11 game win streak at one point. 2 of those were forfeits, but I got the gold. I got the achievement for getting a 10 win streak. So thank you guys if you're watching this by chance. And as you can see, I had a decent record overall. I ran into 4-color Wilhelm control the most, and I had a negative win matchup against Firewater Nature Baki, and I had a losing record against Firewater Darkness GT as well. But everything else was positive. So against Wilhelm, it's really just, can you defend against turn 1 May, and can you dodge triggers? And that's basically the matchup. And can you navigate around the Ryusei Kaiser thing that we talked about in the previous replay. And yeah, I played MRC twice, and I went 1-1 against it, and overall positive. And as for my win percentage going first or second, I had a 63% win percentage going first, and then strangely enough, but only because I played more games going second, I had a higher win percentage going second. But still, I had pretty even split of first and second games, and I had actually surprised how often I won going second, because being an aggressive deck, you obviously favor going first as often as possible. But the fact that you have Evolter and MyPad gives you cost reduction, which means you kind of like jump ahead a turn, which kind of counterbalances the fact that you're going second in some games, because you having a turn 3 evolution as you're getting ready to go into their turn 3 or 4, or their 4 mana, 3 mana, 4 mana turn, can still turn the tides of the game in your favor. So overall, I'm very happy that I gave this deck another try. There were, early on, it was kind of dicey. I think I went like 2-4 in my first 6 games. I was like, maybe do I want to keep pursuing this? But happy I did. Actually got me into Masters, and we'll see if I keep using it. It's an incredibly popular deck, and as you climb up, you might run into more people, might run to the mirror match more often. As you can see, I only ran into it twice here, but it's so popular in the upper levels that I might run into it more, and the mirror match is kind of where I struggle or have struggled. I don't know why. Just the mirror match seems to just have my number sometimes, but we'll see. I hope you enjoyed this particular presentation of the video. I hope you enjoyed that it's shorter than the Exiles video. And yeah, I just felt compelled to do another video because I enjoyed the deck and it did well for me. So hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you next time. Peace. Be easy.